minutes maybe for any latecomers. I mean,
people will join in as they come in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite okay with starting if you.
Govind, what do you think?
Yeah. We should start.
But we don't have any Ahmedabad partners yet.
We want to message them a little bit.
I did. I am. Yes.
Yeah. Just a couple of minutes, then.
So I think we can give a couple of minutes. It's 3 minutes past 9. Maybe at 5 minutes past 9, we just start with whosoever.
Good idea. Good idea. Naushad, are you aware of the Supreme Court matter that's pertaining to the
FCRA?
The origins of the origins of the donor, that even if you're an Indian if you have a foreign passport but you are staying in India, you can still be giving money. There's some argument that's happening in that regard.
It may be happening, but the position under law is very simple. That's what in the law itself, that if you are of a foreign country, it's a foreign contribution, regardless of whether you give India in Indian rupees, from State Bank of India in Indian rupees, NRE account, NRO account, all that is immaterial. The law itself says citizen of a foreign country, it's a foreign contribution. So unless they amend this part and give relaxations to that, okay, money from a PIO or somebody who's a resident in India. No, but right now the letter of the law is clear. Foreign country equals foreign. I was going to cover that when I speak, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's 5 minutes past 9, and I think we'll just start with. I don't know what's your way of starting. So I mean, I leave it to the host to decide.
So I'll introduce you to the group. I mean, here probably most of us know you, at least if not in person, by way of having read your profile, etc.
Yeah.
So, welcome Naushir Dadrawala to this Ahmedabad meet. We have only one partner from Ahmedabad, and of course myself, of course.
Okay.
And Jayant.
And Jayant is there. Oh, Jayant has just joined in. Yes.
I also joined.
All right. So it's growing. Very good. Very good.
Raju Sai here.
Yeah, Raju, I just saw you first. I did not see Jayant.
Okay.
Well, Naushir is part of a center called Center for Advancement of Philanthropy. And he's been there for more than 30 years now. He's a legal expert on philanthropic journey.
Very good.
So, and as we know, of late, there has been many amendments and changes and in legal landscape in running trusts and NGOs. In fact, I remember, we have some 100-year-old trusts, family trusts, which had to be translated into English and re-registered.
Right.
So
all trusts are re-registered now.
Yeah. So I think we'll not spend more time. I mean, legal expert is here, so he'll end.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So without much ado, very good morning to all of you, and thank you for taking time out. Yeah, good morning. I think I've been given a fairly wide backdrop to cover today. I mean, I've been asked to give a little for people who are just starting out on the journey in philanthropy, to those who are already, some people are in related activities. There are issues around FCRA that I mean, may I request people to thing on mute? Background, there's some background coming. Thank you very much, everyone. So when we'll have the question answer session, maybe you all can unmute yourself and talk. Thank you. So first of all, I mean, in this sector, we often use a lot of terms rather loosely. We often refer that is non-governmental organizations. Some call themselves CSOs, which is civil society organizations. Some call themselves CBOs, community-based organizations. But the important thing to know, by whatever nomenclature you decide to call yourself, for the purpose of law, you have to exist for what is called charitable purpose. And charitable purpose is the only thing that is defined under law, whether it is, if you happen to be in Maharashtra, the Maharashtra Public, if you are in Gujarat, the Gujarat Trust Act, or the Income Tax Act. These are the places where you make clear definition of charitable. So calling yourself NGO means nothing. And there is no registrar of NGOs, there is no commissioner of NGOs. Ditto for civil society organizations, which are generally advocacy-based, research-based, community-based organizations. Also terms that we use that, I want to set up a foundation. A foundation means nothing in India. It's not a legal term. It may be a legal term in the USA, but in India, foundation means nothing. It is a term that is prefixed or suffixed to the name of your organization. And you could be an NGO and you can call yourself a foundation, or you could be a corporate foundation and call yourself. Quite interestingly, some of the oldest corporate so-called foundations prefer to call themselves trust. For example, the Tatas are Tata Trust. The Godrej is Pirojsha Godrej Trust. They do not call themselves foundation, but the new breed of corporate entities that have come up have chosen to use foundation. It's a nice term. Most things American we adopt very easily, but the point is that a foundation really means nothing. Also, another popular term that we use nowadays is, I want to set up a social enterprise. Nowhere in the world a social enterprise has been defined. Forget India, nowhere in the world. There's no legal definition. Yes, Wikipedia will give you a definition. There will be various other forms in which you will find definition. But a creature called social enterprise is like an NGO. There's no such thing as an NGO. An NGO is either registered as a trust, Section 8 company, existing for charitable purpose. So what about a social enterprise? A social enterprise is an entity that if you want to register, you have to first figure out what is your model. Are you going to be for profit or are you going to be non-profit? Again, these terms are misnomers. What does a non-profit mean? First timers, people who are not very much into think that as a non-profit, I won't make any profit at all, which is over. Non-profit simply means that if any profits are made by your organization, they are plowed back in your organization for furthering the objects for which you have been created. That's the idea of a non-profit. Non-profit doesn't mean you have to be lost. So these are terms that you need to be very clear about. So social enterprise is an entity that you will create to achieve a certain purpose or a certain social goal using very innovative business methodologies. Now, a social enterprise, you can for non-profit, and your choice is created either as a public charitable trust, or you can create a society, you can create it as a, again, this thing which we call Section 8 company. In law, there is nothing Section 8 company. A Section 8 company is incorporated either as a private company or a public company. And in addition, it has a license under Section 8 of the Indian Companies Act 2013. Earlier, under the Indian Companies Act of 1956, it used to be called Section 25. So many of the older of non-profit companies were called Section 25 companies. Now they are called Section 8. It simply means that you exist for advancement of a charitable purpose. The ROC recognizes you, registered for that purpose, and no dividends will be given to any of your members or shareholders, etc. That is the restriction that you have. And being a Section 8 company, you could be enjoying tax exemption. So coming to tax, many people ask this question: is trust a good option for me? Is society a good option for me? Is Section 8 a good option for me? Well, there are pros and cons to both. And I cannot give a straight-jacketed answer unless I understand what is it that you want to set yourself up. But the important thing you need to know that if you any entity that you have set up for charitable purpose, two things you will want from income tax: tax exemption and tax deduction. Tax exemption means that whatever income is generated by your organization and need to be generated through donations, grants, fees, etc., you want it to be exempt. That exemption is given by income tax under a called Section 12AA, which is now called 12AB. Earlier on, it was given to you in perpetuity. Now it is given only for a period of 5 years and has to be renewed every 5 years. If income tax has given you tax exemption, it means it has recognized you as existing purpose. And the other is deduction, which is your famous ATG, where the donor gets fit of tax deduction for giving contribution to your organization. Now, income tax is indifferent whether you are a trust, society, or a Section 8 company. Many people live under this myth that, I want to do business. I will do business activities also, and therefore Section 8 is a good route for me. In law, even a trust can do business if it wants to, or a society can do if it wants to. Income view the same treatment. The same 12AA, which is now called 12AB, same ATG for tax deduction. So do not think that income tax will give you any preferential treatment if you are one entity over another. Be very clear in that regard. Even with regard to FCRA, you won't get any special treatment if you are a Section 8 company. Both will be, where income tax is concerned, where FCRA is concerned, equal treatment given whether you are a trust, society, or a Section 8 company. Now, charitable purpose is under income tax, and it comes under 6 limbs or parts. Relief of poverty is the first. Education, medical relief, preservation of monuments, and the final omnibus category, which is called any other object of general public utility. If you do not fit into any of the earlier 5, the broad one is this. An organization as such as SVB fits into this category because you are not into relief of poverty in that sense. You are not into, you may be supporting these kind of activities, but you will fall under that. Now, if you fall under the 6th category, and not from now, this was first amended, as I was telling some people who were earlier on this group, that while it is very easy to blame any one particular regime, this amendment first came in the year 2008 when Mr. Chidambaram was the Finance Minister of India, that if you fall under this 6th category, any other object of general public utility, and if you have any business income, back in 2008, the rule was that your business income cannot be more than 10 lakhs. Then when Mr. Mukherjee became the Finance Minister, he raised it to 25 lakhs. And from 2015 onwards, it has been reduced to a percentage that your income cannot be more than 20% of your non-business income. In simple terms, if you receive donations and grants worth of 1 crore of rupees, anything that you earn through fees, services cannot be more than 20%, which means 20 lakhs. Now, the downside, if you make more than in business, will you be taxed only on that business income? Answer is no. You lose your 12A registration. You'll be suspended for the year as tax exempt, and your total income becomes liable to tax. It means your donations and grants also are exposed to getting taxed, and that is the downside. In the UK, the law is very clear. If you have business activity, the tax is only on your business activity, and your donations and the grants are not affected. In India, we do not have that situation. It simply says that if your business income, but this only if you fall under category number 6. In the first 5 is exempt from all this. Please understand that way back in 2015, a very curious thing, that along with education, the term yoga was added. Where was yoga prior to 2015? It was under any other object of general public utility. In 2015, miraculously, it got linked with education to exempt it. Let me say anything further, whose was all done. But this is the way things happen. So you have to be concerned about these things. So now let's very quickly come to, because I've been asked to talk about revenue and income for an organization. So income for an NGO can come through various sources. It can come through individuals. And we know it from various, even if you look at statistics in the USA, Giving USA, etc., says that more than 80% of the philanthropic giving are individuals. So individuals, let us not underestimate the power of the individual. Even Satwa's report, etc., continues to show us that individuals are giving and the numbers are growing. And today we have more HNIs and HNIs than we ever had at any given time in history of this country. So individual is a good source. Then online portals. Now the online portal, if you are raising funds, your biggest worry should be in terms of not wrongly getting any foreign contribution, especially if you do not registration under FCRA, or if you have FCRA, a foreign contribution coming into your local or local going into your FCRA. Both these are violations of the law. And many times it may sound like a very sounding name. Somebody is giving you in India in Indian rupees. Therefore, if you're doing any online fundraising, capturing the nationality of that person, are you a citizen of India or not, is very, very important. So be clear in that regard. CS.
No, sure. Sorry, you're muted. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So where CSR is concerned, a lot has changed this year itself, and I'll be briefly touching on that because I also want to leave a lot of time for interaction, so I don't want to keep talking about everything right away. Government is another source. Government grant is and of course through your self-generated activities. That means you might be charging fees for certain services. NGO may be making products, etc. The important aspect, and this is especially in light of what some of you may have read today's newspaper, you have to understand what is the difference between a donation and a grant. We tend to use these terms interchangeably, but they are very different. A donation is voluntary, and it is given unrestricted. It is generally in the days, and perhaps even today, it is given about your good work. That's all. Somebody might give you 5,000 rupees or somebody give you 5 lakhs of rupees, and they say it's a donation and use it for whatever purpose. You want to use it for admin, you want to pay it for your outgoing, etc. This is to support your good work. That's a donation. A grant is also a gift. Please understand in law, and as the way I interpret it, and as many other legal people would also interpret it, that both donations and grants are in the nature of a gift. But a grant with specific terms and conditions. Now, what government is trying to see or perceive is that grant is contractual between a giver and a recipient, and because a grant is contractual, it is like a business agreement between the two. There is a provider. So the NGO becomes something of what is called a provider of service, and they want to invoke GST in this. Of course, GST would have to be paid by the consumer because GST is an indirect tax. So it's the corporate who may have to pay. So NGOs may have a little sigh of relief to say, oh, as long as I'm not paying, it's not a problem. There are downsides to this. Please understand that if GST applies, it also becomes a commercial contract. There will be then the next thing that gets attracted is because you are a provider of professional services under 194J, 10% has to be deducted as TDS also. Please understand that the grant is in the nature of a gift. To a gift, neither TDS nor GST has to come. Merely because the donor has said, I am giving you this one, say 10 lakhs hypothetically. It must be used within a period of 1 year for the purposes. You will spend only so much on travel. You will spend only so much on education, only so much on healthcare. Now that is specific things that have been put. This doesn't make it a business contract. So this has to be argued and will be argued. But right now, the intent of the government is that grants should be categorized as some kind of a contractual agreement. It is a contract. In fact, even when we say a grant agreement, and this is contractual in nature, both parties are bound by certain terms and conditions. But if you take on a commercial nature, an NGO exists to promote its charitable objects. Income tax has already recognized you as being charitable in nature, is why you got 12A and you got 80G. Now the donor is going to be claiming probably even an 80G, which is a tax deduction for a contribution made. So these two are incompatible. You cannot be saying GST comes over here, but you can have a further conversation on that a little later. Now, what requirements for keeping your tax exemption? Income tax requires that to be exempt in any given financial year, you must use 85% of your total income meaning donations, grant fees, sale of products, whatever it may be, 85% must be utilized by you. So you receive like 1 crore of rupees in total, minimum 85 lakhs will be used. What do you do with the balance 15 lakhs or 15%? You can take it as a reserve fund that is unrestricted. No questions asked on that. but min application of 85% should be. Now, what happens if you are unable to spend 85%? If you have received the income in the financial year, income tax allows you to fill up a form called form number 9A and carry it forward to the next financial year. That means the income late in the year. By late in the year, it would mean sometime around January, February, March. And we know there are a lot of donors offload money in the last quarter of the financial year. So that provision has been given. Or if it's a very large sum of money which you cannot use, there is an also income tax gives you to fill up a form called form number 10 to accumulate the income for up to 5 years. On this part, I think enough leeway has been given to by income tax to us. The second thing is if you make any investments of your funds in deposit, it must be as per the given norms of section 11(5) of income tax. That means you can't invest your money in shares and stocks. Mutual funds are allowed by the income tax, both equity-based as well as debt-based. But if you happen to be a trust or a society in Maharashtra and Gujarat, be careful because there are only certain debt-based funds that the Charity Commissioner allows. But if you happen to be a Section 8, don't worry, you can invest in equity-based and mutual funds also if you like. No board member should be deriving any personal benefit. That's the next tax exemption. And your business income should not be more than 20% of your total income. Okay, now, another aspect that I want to touch upon is corpus giving. Where corpus is concerned, until the amendment happened in 21, under the CSR policy amendment rules of 2021, corpus CSR funds could be given to the corpus of an NGO. But that provision has been specifically revoked now. So don't ever expect company to be giving you their CSR funds towards corpus. Even where foundations are concerned, a few years ago under the Finance Act, one trust can give to another trust, but it cannot give to the corpus. So now your universe that remains for corpus giving is probably only that an individual can give you. What is corpus really? Corpus is that gives you his intention that this is meant to be capitalized by you. In very simple financial terms, corpus is a capital receipt for you. Now, if let us say hypothetically, I give SVP a lakh of rupees and I just give a lakh of rupees, it is income of SVP. But I give it with the direction SVP, please take this 1 lakh towards corpus. Then it is not reflected in the income and expenditure statement of SVP. It goes into the balance sheet as a capital. That means it is recorded their asset, a capital of SVP, and interest that will be generated over the income for SVP for the years to come. Now, the amendment that happened under Finance Act of 2021 says, now from this financial year, if somebody gives to the corpus, you have to, within this financial year, put it in some kind of an FD or a permissible investment and tag it to the donor. So if I have given 1 lakh to SVP, SVP in this financial year will make a fixed deposit, simplicity sake, with the bank and say, this is the 1 lakh given by Naushad Dadrawala towards corpus B, and that is his corpus, which is now in FD number so-and-so, so-and-so. This is the level to which, and it says, if you break into the corpus, you have to replenish it at some point in time. That is the second added directive that has come to us. Now I'll quickly come to FCRA and then try to leave more time for FCRA. Let's come to what has happened in the amendment of September 22. As most of you may be aware, earlier on, if you were an organization registered under FCRA, FCRA stands for Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, you could give foreign contributions received by you to another NGO, provided that other NGO also had registration under FCRA and the money went into its FCRA designated account. But now sub-granting has been totally taken away. If you as an organization receive foreign contribution from any foreign source, you have to use it yourself for a program, project that you run yourself. So therefore, literally killed intermediaries. Intermediaries had a very important role to play in India because there were donors sitting in the US, Singapore, wherever, and who didn't know your grassroots organization, but they knew the intermediaries. And they would say, we are giving it to the intermediary who then can partner with the grassroots level organization and ensure that our money is well spent. But this taking away sub-granting has completed that. Second thing, under FCRA, for foreign contributions that you have received, you cannot spend more than 20% of your foreign contributions received in the financial year on admin costs. You receive like 1 crore of rupees in FCRA foreign contribution in this, not more than 20 lakhs will be spent at the rate of 20% on your admin cost. What is admin cost has been defined under Rule 5 of FCRA. And it means everything from salaries that you pay to your accountants, your staff, etc., people who are actually running your programs and projects. Aadhaar of a board member has to be given to the Ministry of Home Affairs if you want to register under RA. Earlier on a summary inquiry, they could suspend your organization for a period of 180 days, that is half a year. They have assumed powers to suspend you for a period of 360 days, which is literally a year. The second new rule which has come is that if you're fed up of FCRA and you want to voluntarily surrender your FCRA, you can voluntarily surrender it. This is something that delighted me, but I have not sized it because I wanted to volunteer up my FCRA. The rider is that if you voluntarily give up your FCRA, any FCRA assets that you may have to be vested in the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, what do asset mean? Any money lying in your account, your FCRA. Now, I may have some corpus that I have in FCRA, not to disclose any figures there, but that has to be given away to the Ministry of Home Affairs. If out of FCRA funds, I have built a school, I have built a college, I have built a hospital, that will go to the government of India on voluntary surrender. So this also, I mean, you are allowed to voluntarily surrender, but at a big sacrifice. The other thing, I think most people ultimately adjusted to it, that you have to receive all foreign contributions only in one main channel, and State Bank of India, New Delhi main branch. Most people cribbed about it. They really sweated over it, but most of them are now adjusted about it. And I want to touch upon a point which Govind was also talking a little earlier, is what is foreign contribution? Foreign contribution, any contribution that you receive is called foreign source. Foreign source has been defined under Section 2 of CRA. And among other things, in the 10th limb of Section 2, it says citizen of a foreign country. Merely the fact that a person is a citizen of a foreign country. Now, therefore, what does this mean? You might be, and this is a real hypothetical situation, you may be getting, let us say, 2,000 dirhams from somebody sitting in the EU and is sending you from a bank in Dubai or Sharjah or wherever. 2,000 dirhams have been sent, but it is not a foreign contribution. Remember, it is in dirhams. It is sent to you from the UAE, from a bank in the UAE, because the giver is an Indian citizen who is an NRI working on a work permit in the UAE. That is not foreign contribution. But now you have another entity who is Indian, who is resident in India, but is, let us say, a Canadian citizen, an Australian citizen, holding a OCI, old PIO card, gives from his NRE account or by mere fact that the person is a citizen of a foreign country, this contribution is a foreign contribution. You will receive it in India, in rupees, probably from the Central Bank of India or State Bank of India in Indian rupees, but it's a foreign. So therefore, determining nationality of your donor is absolutely, absolutely key. The final couple of minutes I will spend on CSR, and what has actually changed this year in January 21 is that the CSR has now become strictly on spending your 2%. If you happen to be a company that fits the criteria of mandatory CSR under turnover, net worth, or profitability, important is whatever is calculated at the rate of 2% has to be spent. Now, the law speaks about spend, but now the latest FAQ that came about a month ago by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs now goes into the aspect of showing utilization. Earlier on, the position was that a company had 1 crore of rupees to give up. It gave 50 lakhs to NGOA. It gave 50 lakhs to SVP. And the company said, I spent my CSR money. Now, if you look at the FAQ, it says, show us whether you have been utilizing. And if you have not utilized it, then any unspent money, which is now calculated as unutilized, must go into an escrow account. Escrow account that you create, and within 30 days, put over there. Therefore, not even organizations like SVP will have to be careful about is that if you receive money under CSR, make sure by 31st March it is utilized. Otherwise, the company, probably its company secretary or legal department, will demand that unutilized money should be given back to us. We'll put it in escrow and probably give it to you back in the next financial year. But they might do that. Many companies are actually doing that. Some of you may have experienced it. So penalties on the company, or of course, they were even talking in terms of etc., which has been taken away. But now the penalties are twice the unspent or 1 crore, whichever is less. That is on the company. And every officer, the officer will include the directors, CFO, who is a very important officer of for the purpose of CF, will be 1/10 of the amount or 2 lakhs, whichever is less, on every officer. Now, these are the penalties for the company. So there is total panic among companies. Baba, if you don't utilize it, give it to me. The unspent money, I'll give it to the PM CARES Prime Minister's National Relief Fund and it is compliant. So CSR from corporate social responsibility, the C has become compliance, S has become strictly, and R has become rules. CSR, in my opinion, has now become compliant with the rules. With that, I'll stop and want to give you 30 minutes for interaction. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you,
Over to
Naushad.
the
I think it was
audience.
great. Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead. Please unmute and speak. Whosoever wants to.
I'm sure there will be many questions or many clarifications required. Raju bhai, anything that from your side? You can unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Raju bhai, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. The first question is that suppose my trust is there and we are doing some commercial activities for running, say we are running a trust for the mental retarded children and we are doing some job work and we are getting some income. So up to what say GST cannot be applicable?
See, GST is not to be confused with income tax. Income tax is the direct tax. GST is the indirect tax. Under GST, as far as I know, working with mentally challenged is a specifically exempt category. So therefore, you may be exempt under GST because you are working with the mentally challenged people.
Right.
So it speaks about the GST law says that organizations registered under 12AA, which is now called 12AB, having the following activities are exempt under GST. And to the best of my knowledge and belief, offline contact me, I will give you that particular notification of GST. Working with mentally challenged is exempt under GST. So you will be exempt from it, sir. A little louder, sir.
Yeah. You told that income, if it is more than 20%. Yeah. Then so suppose we have created a residential home and we are keeping the guys there and we are charging some fees, though that will be considered as income.
See, you might be able to fit under the category of medical because mental illness is a medical condition and therefore this is a medical relief. So you stand a fairly good chance in saying that you are not in category number 6, but you are probably in category which is the exempt category from the 20%. So you have a reasonably good chance to fight this out.
Okay.
You might come under medical.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone?
I think Shubham had some question.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I put it in the chat also. Might be silly, but does funding equal to grant? We talked about grant and donation. Where does funding come and what does the law recognize, as term?
Oh, funding can come through, let us say you're a Section 8 company, it funds you by putting equity also into your Section 8 company. So funding is a broad term, but a donation is a gift that is unrestricted. A grant is again a gift, but with terms and conditions. And somebody might give you funding, which may be even in terms of a loan or an advance. That, right now you are going through a financial crunch. I'm giving it to your loan as an advance, which needs to be. So funding is a broad term in terms of, you could even use the term contribution. So unless I missed something here, Shubham, Does this see what I've said?
Yeah, this answers.
Okay, thank you, Shubham. Yeah, go ahead, Priya. I think Priya has a question. I see her hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. So we are American citizens, and we have been contributing, donating, funding, whatever you want to call it, because I think we made an assumption, probably wrongly, that as OCI holders, Indian residents, paying taxes in India and so on, we're okay. So maybe we need to have a conversation.
What has happened can't be changed, but yes, you have a conversation. I will give you a link to the official website of Ministry of Home Affairs, FCRA online, and simply read their FAQ, or I'll take an extract that will clear all doubts in me that you are a foreign source. Even if you give money from Pune, wherever you are, Priya, your contribution is a foreign contribution. Even if you are giving it from your NRE account, NRO account, Indian rupees.
Pure Indian account.
But it's a foreign contribution.
Okay.
And don't take it from me, take it from the ministry's official website.
Okay.
But certainly be in touch with me. I'll be more than happy to give you the
I think we'll do that, because we are looking at doing some little larger stuff. So I think we definitely need to have a chat.
Right. And it's better than never. I mean, glad that you know, because I mean, everyone has a learning point. Yeah. And today has been your learning.
Yes.
So I'm happy that, yes, sir, I see a hand up there.
Yeah. Nojit, it's been a wonderful talk. A lot of things which we really didn't know. I just want to have clarification on the funding which you said on the CSR activity. Suppose a company does donate on a CSR activity to an NGO or to an organization which is fitting the donation. And if the project is long term, and it's going to take 1 or 2 years for that funds to be utilized, then how do you do it?
So now they have also come up with this concept of ongoing project. An ongoing project is a project that is for a duration of 3 years, not counting the year in which the project is initiated. So you literally have 3 + 1 years. What you do is you give it in tranches. Make sure that every year, if the project is estimated over a period of 4 years across, only for simple arithmetic, in the first year, ensure, and that too, don't give that 1 crore. You might start giving in tranches of every quarter or half yearly to make sure that the money, and that you can do it. And if it is an ongoing project, whatever is not spent, you put it in an escrow account. You are allowed to put it in which is called the CSR unspent account. So let us say you have decided to support project ABC. ABC project is an ongoing project at a value of 4 crore. So of course is what you have decided. But in year 1, you'll give only 1 crore to them.
Correct.
The balance 3, you'll keep it in an unspent CSR account and start giving them in tranches over the period of next 3 years. This can be managed, sir.
No, once I put it in an escrow account, it will still be treated as my contribution towards CSR.
It will be treated. It will be treated as your contribution as long as you have put it in an unspent CSR account. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And the interest accruing in the unspent account?
That also has to be given for project only.
Project only.
Back to your company. That is what has been.
Okay.
So you can cover inflation thanks to that or whatever, but it cannot go back to your company.
Yeah. Okay.
Govin wants to say something. Unmute.
Govin,
unmute yourself.
Yeah. So the only question I had is, given the recent amendments the last couple of weeks, as SVP, we give grants to our not-for-profit with an MOU that we sign with them, given an understanding of each other's responsibilities and the fact that they will utilize that for a certain specific set of things. Based on the current understanding I'm having now, unless I messed up, is that'll be liable for GST as per the new governance.
See, this AAR, which is the authority, Advanced Authority Ruling Authority,
Advanced Ruling.
GST, Advanced Ruling Authority. It has given some highly challengeable kind of pronouncements, and I'm not even using the word judgments, so which have to be reached. And I am very, very clear in my mind. We will certainly, if push comes to shove, take it to the relevant higher forums of a high court or even up to Supreme Court, is that merely because in a grant you have put certain terms and conditions, it doesn't make it, it neither makes the NGO a provider of commercial service. Please understand that for GST to come, there has to be a consideration. Where is the consideration? This is the gift that is being given over here. And it's not a service provided. It is created for the very objective. The very objective is charitable. So this is a very arguable case. So that is why among the things which I wrote yesterday was, maybe it's still be alert. I mean, use the right language in the MOU, avoid terms such as service and contract. And there are certain terms you should not use in your MOU, but continue to give grants. I do not see as yet a need to press the panic button, regardless of what AAR has. Okay, sir.
But if at all, it will be implemented only prospective, not retrospective, right?
No, it will be prospectively. Yes, that's right. What has happened now.
Yeah. Thank you.
So don't worry about that, because if this really comes into force, I think it's going to be yet another major blow to the entire philanthropic sector. And therefore, it should not be, we should not let it go unchallenged, because here we have a very good cause. But having said that, whatever, I mean, under FCRA, they completely broke our back. And apart from noises we made, the government stood on its ground. And nothing was relaxed, except maybe relaxation in dates. Okay, we give you a few months to open SBI account. We give you some more time to file your return. But we are not moving back on anything else. I mean, at a time when we had COVID and intermediaries were playing a stellar role with foreign contributions, that's the time they killed it. I do not expect any to come out of the government. But regardless, at least on legal grounds, argue this strongly.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, we have just got the FCRA permission, approval. So what care we should take?
Oh, lots. I can do a one-hour session on that. But make sure all the money first comes into your State Bank of India, New Delhi, main
that we already opened.
If you want, you can have a utilization account, but do it mission. Ensure nationality. Make sure if it is it a foreign contribution or physical. Where the money is also concerned, use it for the purpose it is given. That is also something which is in the Supreme Court right now. The donor, the overseas donor, will have to specify the purpose for which it is given. Now, the purpose which is given under FCRA is broadly cultural, economic, educational, religious, and social. That is these are the purposes. And most of us write purpose as social. But I think they want to go beyond that. That under social, what they want to do, or under. So the donor may have to now onward tell you, okay, this is to give scholarship to deserving students, or this is to give medical relief to. So be very clear in getting clear purpose also out of the door. It will be required sooner than you think.
Right.
File your returns in time. Ensure you have separate books of accounts under FCRA. Give quarterly indication to the Ministry of Home Affairs. Annual return is in FC4. A whole bunch of appliances, sir. A whole bunch. We have a separate module on FCRA compliance, which is 1 hour long. Happy that request.
Okay, I will contact you again for that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Prasad, do you want to go next?
Another issue is that, sir, in USA, certain people want to donate, but they want to take the advantage of tax relief in USA.
I'll answer that.
It must,
yeah, go on, sir. Go on.
So it must be a American registered trust.
Yes, 501c3. You have to create what is 501c3 organization in USA, which is the equivalent of our Section 8 company, which is tax exempt. So what you do is, whatever your organization is called, you create a equivalent organization in the USA in any state of your choice. I'm told that the state of Delaware is relatively easy to register your 501c3. So then, because your ATG here is good enough only for Indian taxpayers. The USA are donor. So when you have a 501 organization in the USA, the US donor will get a tax deduction in USA, and that money can then come to your CRA bank account. So, but you'll have to engage some professional in the USA to help set up your 501c3.
Okay. But suppose there is some...
Okay. Go ahead, Raju. Go ahead, sir.
There is some trust already registered there. They give to that trust and that trust gives to us, then it will be
okay. Various options are there. There are also intermediaries in the USA. One of them I can think of is an organization called Give to Asia. Give to Asia is based out of San Francisco Bay Area. I ask them, and therefore I know of their work. You have to give them an annual management fee of less than 10%. And the overseas donor, you can tell them to give to Asia in the USA, interest deduction, and Give to Asia will pass on money to you into your FCRA account. So similarly, like Give to Asia, there must be many others also. There's Global Giving. There's a whole bunch of organizations. Global Giving, although right now is under the SCRA scanner for some reason or the other.
Yeah, for that reason only.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, thank you, sir.
Sashi Bhai's hand is up.
Hi. I'm from a partner from SVP Bangalore, and I'm also a US citizen.
Okay.
I just want to give you the context and ask two questions. One is we have supported an NGO which has FCRA.
Okay.
And therefore, many of the foreign citizen partners in Bangalore chapter have returned checks directly to this NGO. Because
into their FCRA account?
Yes, into their FCRA account, even with the new account. Yeah.
Very good.
So
with
now,
SBI New Delhi main branch.
Yes. Now the question is, if they have unspent money, right, end of the financial year,
is that CSR money that you are referring to?
No, this is through SVP partners. The donation has been made directly.
Shashi, let me give you the answer to that because we talked about it. The rule of unspent only applies to CSR, not to individual donations.
That's right.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. I would have answered the same. So thank you for that intervention. Yeah, only companies under CSR will have to worry about that, not individual donors.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That takes care of my second question, so it's okay.
Excellent. Great. Who else?
Anyone else?
Prasad has a question.
Prasad, you had a question.
Yeah, thanks. Noshir, about the 20% threshold, if you exceed, then your total income will be taxed. Is it total income or your profit? I mean, so
total income. Total income, sir. The language of the law is very clear.
So expenditure, none of the expenditure.
Yeah, expenditure should be able to take a deduction. But what I mean to say is your donations and grants also become open to tax.
That's right. So your profit will be, sorry, good. Your profit will be calculated, right? But in that, are certain expenses allowed, disallowed further? Is there some?
Yes, whatever you went on your objectives may be allowed deduction.
Okay. So it's a little messy one then.
It is messy. It is very messy. It is very messy.
Okay. And the second question is that, you mentioned trust, society, Section 8 company, all have the tax exemption benefits, etc. All have similarities.
Correct.
But practically, are situations better suited for a trust, better suited for a society, better suited for company? Practical situations.
In practical terms, I mean, compliances under Companies Act is far more stringent, as you may be aware. Some of you who are from the corporate world.
Yeah.
Relatively, where trust is concerned, you only file your annual return with the charity commissioner and a change report as and when a change happens on your board or on your But having said that, the charity commissioner's department is a slow state government department. For everything, there are affidavits and it functions like a district court. And there are enormous delays. Now, for a simple thing as a trustee has resigned and you want to file a change report in several months, including affidavits and personal appearances, etc. Where you're a Section 8 company, you can just go online and in real time, your change will be filed.
Right.
The big difference that comes in that as a Section 8 company, you will have limited liability for your board. Whereas in a trust is not a body corporate. And therefore, the liability of the trustees is personal. And therefore, it exposes you not. Having said that, in more than 50 years of the Maharashtra Trust Act and various other laws, I mean, no one has been personally held liable. That's another assurance. People who worry too much about that. But it somewhere exposes you. Whereas here, it is limited either to the share capital of your Section 8 company or it is by guarantee. The guarantee could be 500 rupees. So your personal assets of your board members will not be attached, at least in terms of any kind of major financial issues, etc. if at all they come out. So that is the single greatest advantage that you have. And yes, as a Section 8 company, come under a central law, at least the corporate people are very familiar with ROC and the working of the ROC. Mostly corporate entities prefer to go to Section 8. But if you are an individual and trying to, you are a husband and wife, set up something good initiative, you might get overwhelmed with the compliances under Companies Act. There, a trust might probably be a much easier thing for you. So my answer would be very subjective over here.
Sorry, and society? Where would society be preferable?
I in Maharashtra and Gujarat even recommend, because by default, society will also get registered as a trust. And you'll need 7 members to create society. Again, the whole process of having AGMs and members, and it's a very democratic thing. You want to create a kind of a democratic setup where you want people's involvement. Society also has its place. Remember, it's one of the oldest legislation. The Societies Registration Act is an act of 1860. Yes. It is a product of the India's first revolution of 1857, because there were societies and various others that were into revolutionary activities, and that is why it is law was by the then. I mean, earlier it was the world's first MNC, British East India Company, who were running India, and moved to Queen Victoria, who was Empress of India. This law was enacted to control various societies, which were actually into revolutionary activities. So the history of these legislations is also very interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.
Naushir, this was incredibly illuminating. I have one clarification and one question. The clarification is that the donation which SVP partners give to SVP, that is untouched. There's no GST implication there.
No.
Okay.
So far, don't worry about it.
Okay. And
regardless of what AR has said recently, regardless.
Okay. The question is that when SVP does these agreements with NGOs where a certain amount is given to them and there's a certain expectation chart which is given that this is the amount which is being given and this is where we want you to use, does it make it a contract which actually can be, if one of the parties breaks it, the other party can actually file a case against you? You're on mute.
Yeah, I mean, any grant agreement is by nature contractual, that both parties have certain obligations. The donor is obliged to, if he is supposed to give you in 4 tranches, he has to ensure that he is going to give it to you. But if it says, I'm going to pay per performance, if you see performance in the first quarter, now that is a legitimate right of the donor. That still is an agreement and it is contractual between the two, but it's not a commercial contract. See, for the purpose of GST, the concept of consideration must come in. Okay, is it for a consideration? It is service, yes. But service to whom? It is service to society, to the donor. And that service is in furtherance of its objects. And where is the consideration? The NGO is taking that money to carry out that work as per its charitable object. So there are lots of loopholes that can be comfortably argued in a competent court of law.
Again, muted again.
I don't know why it's just automatically happening. I'm sorry. So let's too carried away. I mean, it's something to feel concerned about. Not for a moment I'm taking that away.
Again, it's happened.
I'm not even touching. All right. But I would say that for the moment, just continue as you have been. And just make it very clear that it is a grant where you are giving up. Just don't use you will provide the following services. Don't do all of that. You will add the following activities. Maybe you want to add the word following charitable activities.
Okay.
You can use all these terms which will give a proper. So, I mean, activities is fine. You carry out the following charitable programs and projects. All these are useful languages because the trust or your NGO partner is created for furthering the charitable purpose.
So we need to be careful with the legal drafting. We need to be careful.
Bingo.
Okay. Okay. But on another tag, just an extension of this, now I'm talking of a very different thing altogether. SVP and the NGO have an agreement where we are giving money to them and they are fulfilling certain purposes.
Yes.
Now, if the NGO does not fulfill that purpose, we can terminate that agreement and say we will give you no further money which is due. Can the NGO file a case against SVP saying that no, we have actually done what we were supposed to do and this is totally wrong, blah, 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 and file a case under a Contracts Act?
Theoretically, the right to redress is given. So regardless of whether you do it on stamp paper and register it with the registering authority, if somebody wants to sue you, has the will to do it and the money to do it, they will do it. So the right to redress is guaranteed. It's a constitutional right. But whether they succeed or not is another matter. But yes, I mean, as long as you have good reason to say that there was absolutely no performance, you have every right to not give the next tranche.
Right. Right. Fair enough. Okay. Thank you so much.
A breach of agreement. Please understand that when an agreement need not necessarily always be on stamp paper and duly read. The moment two parties sign, it becomes an agreement under the Indian Agreements Act. So it's already there, and both parties they have a legal obligation to carry out their obligation. You as a donor are obligated to give, but you have already agreed, and rather both parties have agreed that if there is performance, I will stop giving you. So if you have that term and both parties have signed, then it's already agreed to. Then it's ground for. You can go to the court, but the court won't hold it. It won't admit the case to begin with because there is a breach. You didn't perform. Simple as. Okay, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Arshia wants to say something.
Yeah. Hi, Naushir. Thank you for this really educational session. Every time I hear you, it's some new education. Just wanted a very quick thing from you as to what is the penalty if the CSR money is not utilized. You had mentioned it earlier, but I wasn't able to
it's twice the unspent amount. Twice the unspent amount or 1 crore, whichever is less for the company.
Okay, all right.
Twice the unspent or 1 crore. So that means if it's a very large amount, still your liability for the company is up to 1 crore. And every officer that is together, a penalty of 1/10 of the amount not spent or up to 2 lakhs, whichever is less. That is the penalty.
All right. Thank you.
Aarti, would you like to come in? Unmute. Aarti Hegde has raised a hand.
Yeah, hi Naushir. Thank you again. This is really useful.
Thank you.
Just want to check with you. I'm from Bangalore, from the Bangalore chapter, and we're, working on a large waste management project here, right? Where we're expecting to, we'll have to raise grants, right, from corporates and things like that. So when you say that business income can't exceed 20%, right, for SVP, right? Now, if we receive these grants from corporate and then route it to a company, to an organization which is a for-profit organization, right? And possibly this could exceed, I mean, I'm not sure, but I feel that this might exceed 20% of our total, total
how is
funds.
giving to a for-profit, I mean, even in advancement of your charitable objective, why would you be giving it to profit?
Because it's a environmental project. So
it's a social enterprise is what you're.
Correct.
Well, yeah. As long as it is achieving that purpose, I mean, I do not see this as a business income that you're not generating any business income. You're giving this money for advancing the purpose of environmental preservation or whatever the case may be. So I don't think this is a business income that you're generating from what you're telling me.
Okay. So just getting a grant and then forwarding it is not treated as business.
That is as per your SVG's object is to.
No, but Aarti, just to qualify it over here, if I as a corporate give SVP a grant of 1 crore to give to the waste management project.
Yeah.
We cannot give it to the waste management project because we are not, our articles don't say we can give to a for-profit.
Correct.
So we cannot give it to them. Although it's from an NGO or from a corporate to us. The corporate can give it to the waste management directly because they are allowed to invest in waste management or give grants to social enterprises. As SVP, we cannot contribute to anything.
So we'll have to do it directly then to them, not via us, then not through SVP.
No, that's right, Aarti. You'll have to do it. We can support them, we can provide time, we can provide capability, but we cannot take it through our bank accounts. Because, am I right, Naushad?
Yeah, the CSR rule is very clear that the company can carry out CSR directly on its own with the help of its staff if it wants, or even outsource it through the help of a private company, or through their own foundation, or it can do it through an like SVP, which means an CSR implementing partner. That is the term used under the rules. Which must be either a society or a Section 8 company, track record of 3 years of service, and also must be registered on the MCA portal having CSR1 unique identification number. So once these criteria are met, you as a corporate can give your CSR funds to SVP because it meets all those criteria. They in turn engage the services of yet another entity, NGO with or even a private social enterprise, and can achieve that purpose which you seek as a company to fulfill your CSR obligations. Does that answer your question, Aarti?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank you.
So
now, should I have one more?
So we're a little past 10. I'm happy to extend it a little bit, but just want to be conscious of the time because a few people have already logged off, I can see. So, I think we can do another 5 minutes if there are questions. I don't want to leave anyone answered as far as possible. So please go ahead.
Now, should I have one more question? You mentioned that there was, the corpus. If you donate to a trust or an NGO where you're donating towards the corpus, right? Then that corpus income, just want to clarify. You're saying has to again be reflected back in the individual who's donated it. Is it? Is that what you?
Yes, it has to be tagged. There is the term income tax. That means whoever has given to the corpus, individual or institution, the investment that you made must correlate with that donation. But that is for the NGO to comply with, not for you as a donor to worry about.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
A quick question, where SVP is the implementation partner for a CSR fund, in this case, from a company. If in case we have unspent money left in the SVP kitty by end of financial year, what would you advise we do? We return it back to them?
Yes, the corporate is most likely to ask you to return it. And then soon after the new year sets in, they'll probably give it back to you if it is meant for an ongoing project. That is what most companies seem to be, because I've been interacting with a lot of companies and they seem to have adopted that policy with the CSR committees and CFOs and the legal department, which is fine. I mean, temporarily take it away, put it in their escrow account and give it back to you. Okay?
Yeah, I think it was a great. Anybody else?
Looks like we are towards the end now.
Hi, Malay here. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you. Hi.
Excellent information.
Okay.
Sorry, I joined a bit late at a guest over. So anyway, great learning. And we learned two aspects, one's from corporate and one from like sort of a personal philanthropy. So I learned quite a bit of it. So if any questions, we'll shoot out to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, some of you are welcome for occasional offline discussions with me. One or two I've already. So, I mean, feel free to do that. All right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Naushad. I think it was a great session. It was one of the best sessions that I've attended so in many weeks and months.
I'm great for all the positive feedback I've received. I actually thank SVP for the opportunity to interact with and make new acquaintances with so many people from Gujarat, which is my birthplace. And yeah, I was born in Balsar in Gujarat.
Oh,
so.
Are you?
Balsar is my karma bhumi.
Yeah, so it's my but it's my Janma Bhumi. I'm a Parsi, as you can see.
Yes,
and I was born in
know.
Balsar. So yes, so I mean, so it was very. I mean, I was quite excited to do this for SVP Gujarat. I relate very much. I mean, Maharashtra is my karma bhumi, but Gujarat is my Janma.
Wonderful, good to know. We'll keep in touch.
Okay, sir.
And I think it was a great session, great learning, and with new landscape, legal landscape, we were all worried that what is happening. And I think you cleared.
I continue to do a lot of blogging on all these subjects. So I mean, it's anyone can go to our blog and read up free knowledge there. So you can follow all that. I also have a podcast list on which I give up, etc. So we'll try to, and people forward it from there onwards. So, we try to share knowledge as much as possible. So we'll be happy to do it.
With your permission, can we share this recording with our investees? Because I think
you may. I personally do not have any issues with your sharing it with your investees. All right?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Good day, everybody. Have a nice day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.